You're listening to the Renegade Blitz, the best podcast for Steelers fans by Steelers fans. Follow us on Twitter at Renegade Blitz, at RBlitzPod, and at Blitz Videos. Read articles on RenegadeBlitz.com, like us on Facebook, and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast app.
And welcome back to the Renegade Blitz podcast. I'm Ty Polk with Chris Ward and Brandon Walker. Back to recap the Steelers' Monday night victory, 29-27 over the Chicago Bears. And there's a lot to talk about with this game, but we want to start off with the, burning subject out of this game, and it's the officiating. And really, you could talk about it on it being more harmful for Chicago because, they lost, but also there was a few calls against the Steelers, namely those reviews. When you think about that, the catch made on the sideline by Marquise Goodwin and also the fumble by Ray McCloud, if you guys take a look back at it, they were kind of similar, reviews in a way, because it showed exactly how they were going to call this game on Monday night. It showed that, if there's any bobble of the ball, and this call has already been made, they're going to stick to it. And that's exactly what they did that night. They ruled Marquise Goodwin's catch before going to review. They ruled it as a catch. And then they ruled Ray McCloud's fumble as a fumble, and they went to review. And I guess they decided that was the evidence that there was a fumble and that was a catch. And guys, there's been a lot to talk about it. I've listened to a lot of podcasts. I've seen other people write about it. I want to get your guys' take on it.
It's all about consistency. Well, those two, I guess, at that point they had showed consistency. You got to stick with the ball on the call on the field. There's not enough to overturn it. I actually thought that was a fumble, and the catch is, you can. It's a. I'm sorry to say it. It could be more debatable, but I think it was definitely a fumble because you see the ball moving. So fumble is definitely different from a catch. So
yeah,
how do you call it?
I didn't have an issue with either of those two calls, but the main one is obviously the Cassius Marsh taunting penalty, which ended up resulting in a Steelers field goal where they took a 26-20 lead, and they were knocked off out of field goal range once Marsh made that sack late in the fourth quarter. But I'm not a big fan of the taunting penalty. I mean, unless it's really obvious, like when Tyreek Hill does the deuces and stuff when he goes in for an end zone or something, like taunting a player. But I mean, even that, we go back to our mid 2000s, like when we were growing up in that range, it's part of the game. Marsh, he walked towards the Steelers bench, and he wasn't even that close, and he didn't even say anything. He was just staring them down. He also did a spinning heel kick too, which is pretty interesting. I guess that's a signature sack move, but which doesn't happen often because he was a practice squad player that got promoted. And he was with the Steelers for a short period last year, and even this year he got cut in late August. But
right.
And then the late or the low block penalty that the Bears got called in, which negated the touchdown, and they ended up kicking the field goal in that drive. So I don't know, Tony Corrente he definitely had a rough night all around.
Oh yeah, it was rough. It's bad. You said he was 69 years old. Yeah, I think he should retire after this game because it was so egregious. Like, he didn't touch anybody. You have that penalty, and then you miss a roughing the passer penalty on Ben, and then Highsmith damn near kills Justin Fields on the field after the play, and then no roughing the passer call. Yeah, the Bears kind of got hosed in this game a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about on that end with the roughing the passer calls, and normally Ben doesn't get any of those. So anytime you see a roughing the passer call with the Steelers, you're just like, oh my God, what a gift from the heavens. But yeah, that Justin Fields hit by Highsmith, that's textbook roughing the passer. I mean, the general thing is 2 steps and that's a penalty. If it's 1, If it's one, unless they're trying to be really ticky-tacky, or it's Tom Brady at quarterback, or Patrick Mahomes maybe sometimes, they're going to call that. You can't hit him after he throws the ball, no matter what. But in that situation, a hit from behind, you see numbers, that's got to be roughing the passer.
Yep.
But there's a lot to also talk about with the Bears. I mean, they had a ton of penalties that night, and it was all about lining up in the neutral zone, which just felt like a very weird penalty to have consistently. I know that we have the benefit of when you're watching from the sanctuary of your own television, you can see the blue line and stuff like that, but there's been a lot of those weird neutral zone infraction calls, and I don't know how you can really fix that other than, well, just line up like a few inches off of the ball. But again, as you can see on the other side with TJ Watt, any inch that an offensive line has against you in terms of starting just a little bit earlier can be the difference between, well, most players not getting any sacks at all. But of course, TJ Watt is a freak of nature and he's not human. He has 3 sacks regardless of getting held, and offensive linemen getting the benefit of the doubt on some of those false starts.
Well, yeah, the Bears got penalized 12 times for 115 yards. So that's kind of interesting. I mean, some of them, a lot of them was the neutral zone infractions, and a lot of them, they got away with a lot of false starts. A lot of them. It seemed like every third play, I see Jason Peters and their right tackle and their center was just jumping.
It seems like that's been an ongoing thing across the league, though. Like the refs, it seems like they give those tackles like a little bit. Like if they go a couple seconds before the ball snapped, like they're okay with that. But like, I mean, some of these calls were like just clear.
Yeah, expect in the future that there's going to be the emphasis right now is on taunting. I think they should have just called it unsportsmanlike and not even give it a new name. Just call it what it always has been. You're going to do it unsportsmanlike conduct. But There's one thing that I have to say about that. I'm just telling people right now, next season, because it's been, how it used to be like so hard to see that. It's just like any of the little bit of jumps. Now you could sit there and watch your television and clearly see this guy is getting off his perch faster than even the ball is snapped. And you could tell. I'm willing to bet. I would love to go to Vegas or Rivers right now and put in a bet that at one point during the competition committee next offseason that there is a emphasis on false starts by offensive tackles, because again, it's been a little bit more apparent than usual.
Oh yeah. I definitely agree. Competition committee is going to look at that big time. I think that might be tops of the list.
Really, the other thing is probably bringing over the XFL's replay official. So they have been a little bit good with that this year, but I think they need a little bit more expansion out of that, because situations like last night for both teams, it just harmed Chicago a little bit more because they lost the game. They arguably should have won that. But that was something just out of this world. But it's kind of been a more common occurrence with the NFL this season in terms of bad officiating, or as Urinating Tree likes to call it, ref ball.
Ref ball.
Yeah, do you think? Would you say that the Steelers won that game because of the refs, or do you think those calls really? I mean, they won by 2 points, and you take a touch, 4 points with that touchdown that they took away. They ended up getting a field goal. And then Boswell hit that 52-yarder because the Marsh.
I'm sorry. I think so. I think the referees helped them win that game. Maybe not hold directly, but you take 4 points off for a field goal. 4 points off. You shave 3 points on a roughing and on that taunting penalty. I forgot when those roughing plays in question. I forgot when they happened. Did they happen on any of those drives when they scored, or
this was when I believe they got a field goal, and they ended up getting 6 points.
Okay, what do you mean for the Steelers when they called it on Ben?
That was.
I'm talking about when did he rough Ben? I can just look it up now, but
it was in the first half.
First half.
Yeah.
Did they score on that drive? We'll take a look. I got the play-by-play here.
Okay, yeah. The one that happened when the Bears got the field goal, it was 14-3, and it ended up being 14.
Oh, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the when they sacked Ben, when they had that roughing call.
Okay, I got
it appears that they did not score on either one of those drives. So I think it didn't affect that part of the game, the Ben part. I mean, we can't say I don't know when precisely tell when the roughing on Fields part. So
I feel like it happened in the second half, probably somewhere around the third quarter.
Around third.
Yeah, it was when it was 14-3, and the Bears ended up kicking a field goal. It was it was 14-6 in the third quarter.
It was. It definitely was, because they were at the 1 yard line.
Yeah.
They were at the 1 yard line when it happened. Second and goal at the Steeler 1 yard line when they had that low block penalty, which didn't happen. It was ridiculous. So,
I mean, there's a lot of things we could talk about with officiating this game. You could also argue about the rare read option by Ben Roethlisberger not being a first down for the Steelers, and they get the milk more clock off, and maybe the Bears have no shot to kick that 60-plus yard field goal that they say hit the crossbar. But I think because of how high the ball bounced, they got confused by that looking off the monitor. It does happen sometimes, trust me. But we'll move on to other subjects with the Steelers. And another thing we could talk about is that the Steelers are having the top blown off them a little bit more apparent this season than ever, and it really did change the game for the Bears. And you think about, again, the Goodwin play, also to Massey, Allen Robinson. There was a lot of times, and I remember on that last scoring drive for the Bears, Arthur Millette just got abused. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He really needs some safety help in that situation from Minka, maybe even Terrell Edmonds, but they were more focused on trying to make Justin Fields' legs not be, the game winner for Chicago. And it did work out there well, but sacrifices were made, and Arthur Millette was, the big abused. Sacrifice that game. Yeah, abused. You can talk about it all game. I mean, a lot of people want to say cut Millette, but you can't do that in this situation. It's just like sometimes you have to look at it. Why is this man out here in this situation basically being told, like, yo, you're a nickel corner. Cover a number one wide receiver that plays in the slot.
Yep. That's a poor coaching decision. And yes, why do you think they are struggling to close games on defense?
That's a good point. I mean, you look at the last couple of games, the second half, like the Seahawks game, the Denver, they came back in the second half too. They just fall apart. Well, they did. They played pretty well in the second half, especially the fourth quarter against the Browns. But I don't know what's going on with their second half defense and what kind of adjustments they're making, or what changes.
Or lack thereof.
Lack of thereof. Yeah.
Maybe it's because these guys that they've been facing off against, at least their offensive coordinators or the head coaches themselves, are realizing, oh wait, we have guys that can do something in the slot out here. You think about the Broncos with their receiving weapons out there. You also have the Seahawks as well. I mean, DK Metcalf is the big guy out there, but they have a bunch of other guys that can do stuff out there as well. And the Browns, when all cylinders are firing like what they did against Cincinnati this week, they have guys that can also create havoc out there. So you're just wondering, is there a certain point where the offensive coordinators and the head coaches for the other team realize that, oh, wait, they have this guy covering them on an island. Let's just go attack that.
I mean, I think the Bears, they executed well too. I mean, they had terrible field position in the first half, and they were kind of a lot of penalties, and they were just like getting behind the chains. But in the second half, Fields, he threw the ball down the field really well. I think he averaged like almost 15 yards per target or per attempt or something like that. And he completed 4 passes that went for 20 yards or longer. So I was pretty impressed with Fields. I think the Bears I think they got their legit quarterback for the future.
Yeah, I agree. I could piggyback on that. And but he was amazing. He made plays. I saw the future. They have a quarterback, except one thing. That coach, Matt Nagy, is not going to get him there.
Yeah.
They're not going to get him there.
You could say that. I think Matt Nagy is probably a pretty good offensive coordinator. Doing that out there with the Chiefs. But then again, that line of offensive coordinators under Andy Reid is a mile long. A lot of guys made their bones being his OC. You can thank Brad Childress, who also helped out with Mike Tomlin there, for getting him the job with the Minnesota Vikings. And then you could go all the way down the entire line with that Reid coaching tree. So there's something there. This was the first game for the Bears with Justin Fields and Matt Nagy both being the primary play callers where they actually did something. I just don't know what to say about Nagy. Maybe this is not the coaching job for him anymore, because a lot of what the Bears did, yes, that taunting penalty sucks, but those neutral zone infractions, encroachments and stuff like that, those are things that go down the coaching. Those are things you have to fix. They cannot happen.
Yep.
Yeah, they changed some things up too. They even did the Wildcat with Montgomery, and they scored a touchdown off of that. I think Devin Bush. I didn't see it. I have to go back and watch, but I saw the touchdown. But people were saying that he made a bad read on that touchdown run.
Yeah, it was a bad read. Talking about Devin Bush on that
Mooney touchdown.
I think it was Mooney that he scored.
Mooney scored. Yeah,
it was Mooney.
Montgomery
because that won me my fantasy league game. That's how I know.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry to mention my fantasy team, but that's what
and then
won
Jimmy
me the
Graham,
game.
He beat Edmonds down the seam too. They were targeting. Komet had a pretty good game for the Bears. He was making.
Yes.
He had a pretty good game.
They got some young weapons there.
He's got to find a guy that can put it all together. And here goes the ironic thing. They could probably use a guy like Lovie Smith right now. I think nowadays this team is more built to be under Lovie Smith than the year they actually made the Super Bowl.
Yeah, because he's good with younger teams. He's always been good with younger teams. But what can fix the ultimately, what will hinder him is that I don't want to be disrespectful to the ownership. The ownership is going to let him down. I'm going to leave it at that, because I'm just going to leave it at that.
I mean, there's a lot of things that go on with ownership across the league. I don't think the McCoskeys are necessarily the deal breaker with that. I think they've shown with the acquisition of Khalil Mack, when they believe they have a team, they will go for it. But I think this team is probably more built for it. But I think it's just like the Steelers with their defense and the great offense, and now it's the inverse, and now they're kind of in a middle stage right now. I think the ship, in a way, at least for the defense, sailed a little bit. And we could talk a little bit more about that. There was some missing pieces for the Bears, namely Khalil Mack, and Khalil Mack would have made a extreme difference in this game, even though, of course, guys like Cassius Marsh were able to get in on Ben Roethlisberger. But that's the one thing I want to talk about next. What can we make out of this game with Ben Roethlisberger? It's what you wanted out of him, at least in terms of a stat sheet performance. 21 of 30, 205 yards, 2 touchdowns. He still remains as one of the only quarterbacks since week 5 that hasn't thrown an interception. Has it gotten very close? Yes, but the important thing is it hasn't happened.
Yeah, Roethlisberger, he hasn't been putting up, gaudy numbers, but, he has a 6-0 touchdown interception ratio, during the 5-game winning streak. So, I mean, he's playing, he's not losing the game for him. I would like to see a little bit better numbers as far as like passing. Like the Steelers, they need to increase their points and their yardage total. Because I mean, like these close games they're winning. Like I have to look at their point differential and stuff, but I would like to see them blow out, or at least get a substantial amount of lead on some of these teams. Because I think it's going to hurt them down the road when they start playing some of these more elite playoff caliber teams.
Oh. Yeah, Ben has played well enough. I think this might be the best he can do. I still have a feeling he's going to crash and burn still as the season goes along. Because we all three agreed that this was it. This is a very soft area of this schedule. We're not going to figure it out till basically after Thanksgiving. And can the offensive line improve enough, which they are, they're on their way. Last night they didn't show. They gave up 4 sacks. Can they offset it and protect Ben enough? Because Ben will not get better as the season goes along. And their point differential. Oh, okay, you want to know what their point differential is, Chris?
Yeah.
Steelers are 5-3. The Steelers points for 161. You want to know what the points against is?
What is it?
169. -8.
That's how narrow it is for this team right now. I mean, we could talk about it all day, but I want to talk more about the offensive line. I said it on the Twitter page that I kind of knew that exactly how the Steelers' offensive line was going to go. It was going to be effectively they were going to show more strides early on in the run game than they were going to do in the passing game. And yes, Ben Roethlisberger did get sacked 4 times on Monday night, but there was enough moments where they actually created good pockets that has me going, okay, maybe this could be something by the time they reach week 14, if they're still in the playoff hunt, which I think right now, let's not count the chickens before they hatch, but if they get out of this game in Detroit, could I trust them to steal a few games on their way out there to maybe at least competing for a playoff spot? Yeah, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility.
Oh, no, it's not, because the AFC is mediocre. It is a mediocre conference. Your best team, apparently, who did they lose to?
The Jacksonville Jaguars.
Of course, exactly.
But also, you got to look at it like this. The Tennessee Titans are not going to go away. And I think the team's smartest decision was also looking out and trying to see if they can, showing that, hey, people can also trust Ryan Tannehill to do something. Ryan Tannehill is going to have some weapons around him. When they finally get Julio back, which may be in December when the Titans come to town, it's going to be a team that if Derrick Henry can get back into like good enough shape where they can have an AP and Derrick Henry backfield, I don't know if I want to face the Titans offense.
You know what? It might be a crazy thing to say, but Derrick Henry, I mean, he's great. He's awesome. Is that really that big of a loss? You still got AJ Brown. You have Julio Jones. You have a nice running back. Their running back, I mean, AP, he's an ageless, and you got a couple guys. The guy that was playing for the Texans last season, or Foreman, he was pretty good. He averaged about 4 yards on Sunday night. I know we're going on tangent on other teams, but look, they are solid. And Simmons on defense, man. He was a beast.
Yeah, he's good. I remember.
Let me just say this right now. The reason why people were kind of like freaking out and saying the Titans were over at the time is because Derrick Henry accounted for 30% of that offense. 30% of that offense in this day and age, with basically spread out pseudo air raid offenses being in vogue, for a running back to be 30% of the offense, if you would have told me like that was maybe like 13 years ago with CJ2K in the backfield, I'd be like, yeah, a running back 30% of the offense, actually that's kind of low. It should be more like 40 or 50 maybe. So, yeah.
I mean, it's a passing league at the end of the day, so. And the Titans do have a passer. They got a guy that can get it done. Ever since V in Miami right now, I don't know. With Tua, they got rid of Tannehill.
I think it's the one like good sign. Of course, there is a Dr. Jekyll and Dr. Hyde with former Adam Gase quarterbacks out there right now, and that's what you see in Tennessee and in Carolina. But of course, Sam Darnold still has a rebuttal. I don't know if it's going to be as good as what it was in the first couple weeks of the season. But
he's hurt.
Yeah, he's clearly hurt.
He just got hurt.
Well, let's get back to the Steelers quickly here. Thank you for tuning in for Around the NFL. But we're just out here shooting people. But if there's another thing you want to talk about is, of course, it's the man of the hour. It's T.J. Watt, and you could also add in there Cam Hayward. I mean, these two guys have stepped up to a whole new level. Cam Hayward, especially with that interception, he officially is tied for the team lead in interceptions. That's how derelict the Steelers secondary in terms of interceptions has been. And guess who he's tied with? James Pierre, your boy, Brandon. But I mean, we could talk about it, but it's really been those two guys in perhaps the most Herculean performance. And I guess you could also add in there Alex Highsmith as well as a support gunner with Watt. That pass rush for the Steelers, it had some trouble because, of course, a running quarterback always creates those types of havoc. But still, it was a great performance by that pass rush. 3 sacks by Watt alone.
How many does he have doing now?
11 and a half. Mm-hmm. That's like 6.5 games too, because he got injured against the Raiders and he didn't play against the Bengals in week 3.
Most guys have that in like an entire year.
2 years.
Yeah.
2 years. But 11, he's at 11 and a half now.
He's unbelievable. I mean,
there's
a couple players up for defensive player that, Myles Garrett's obviously in there, Diggs and Dallas, and then, even Aaron Donald. I saw those 4 are the top right now.
I feel like you just have to give him it this year now because he's really been essential to that entire defense. I mean, you take away their 2 best interior linemen on a 3-4 defense. He sometimes lines up as a defensive end with his hand in the dirt. So you could arguably say the Steelers run a pseudo 4-3 out there. That's just the way their scheme is. Right. But you have to look at this guy and go, when you look around at every other team in the league, really I think it's him and Diggs. But Diggs has kind of fallen off a little bit in the last couple weeks. And that's why I say Watt's on top right now. So I think when you look at it, he had last year he had issues with the strip sacks. I believe his first strip sack was against Indianapolis in the division championship winner. He's now getting those with regularity like he was the previous few years, and now it's clear. They don't win that game against Seattle against them, and probably against Chicago. You could put a pretty sizable argument alongside Cam Hayward. They don't win that game either.
Yeah, that's like the dynamic duo. Myles Garrett has 12 sacks this year. I just looked him up, but going pound for pound, TJ Watt is the defensive. I don't know if they're going to say the defensive player of the year, but he's the defensive MVP. Like, if defensive, I don't know what they have defensive MVP, but you know what I mean. The defensive player of the year may be Myles Garrett, but the defensive MVP, your most valuable player for your team, it's definitely TJ Watt, Top Gun. And I would say Cam Hayward would be number 2.
Oh, yeah, Hayward's been
yes,
real high level too. It's his best year that I've ever seen Hayward play. I mean, every game he's making impact plays. That was his second career interception there, and that was a great play too. He batted the past the line of scrimmage and somehow deflected into his hands.
Yes, and I thought he was going to throw a pick or two, but I didn't think it was going to be Hayward that was going to get the pick. But remember our thing? I messaged you. I was like, "Yep, here it comes." But they're good on the first half. The problem is they got to do it for 4 quarters on a consistent basis. I have a question now. Do you guys think that TJ Watt and the way he plays affects them in the second half? Because their pass rush is not as effective in the third and fourth quarter, with the exception of the Seattle game, of course. But you think he was going all out, which is great. It's awesome. Affects the Steelers?
In a way, yes.
Late in the fourth quarter?
In a way, yes. I think that we're going to go back and look at it probably when it's all said and done with the season and go, maybe they should have tried to work something out with Melvin Ingram just to have him be like the guy that replaces TJ a little bit. Like they can run. TJ likes to run in spurts. He'll sub himself out because he goes all out. It's just like his brother. And you're just hoping that if he's going to do that, he doesn't have the injury bug that JJ has. At least recently. He's still great regardless. I think if he wanted to go out there and play and Arizona had their hands tied behind their back, he'd go out there and play anyway, because that's just JJ Watt, and that's how much of an impact he makes. TJ makes a very similar impact to this team. So when I think of it like that, this is where I kind of wish they had Ingram still with them. I wish they would have tried to say, like, look, we're gonna figure out a way here to get you like running gun snaps out there. And maybe that could have helped the Steelers pass rush a little bit more with that, especially if Charlton was going to come out to the foray. But I think, does anyone remember hearing his name out there?
Nope. I didn't see out. Nope, I didn't see
I didn't hear him too often.
No pressures? Nothing?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, that's kind of a scary thing. But then again, the Steelers wanted Charlton as well during that draft. He was picked up 2 spots ahead of Watt. So there's just a lot of things you can look at with this Steelers team and go, you want to have an embarrassment of riches, and in a way they kind of do, but at least in the pass rush front. The problem is most of that embarrassment, they can't exactly come to the foray right now, and that would really help TJ a lot. So I think largely he's running this way because, 1, they don't have the personnel in a way right now, and 2, that's just how he's always been.
You're not exactly 100% wrong, but I would say Wormley is playing great. Bugs is doing his thing out there. You're not going to get, I know may not be Alu and to it, but they're holding the fort down for them.
Well, that's one thing, and it's good. it's good to have that defensive line depth, even if a 3-4 isn't exactly the calling card for defensive line depth in a way. You still need it, but also those guys have fared in pretty well and has not maybe messed up the vibe, for lack of a better term, with TJ Watt and all that stuff, but still, you want to have Tuitt and you want to have Alualu out there. And maybe these guys could go out there in a full-time role replacing them, because when you think about it, I know that Alualu had this great run last year and he kind of just like reinvigorated his career, and nose tackles can hang around forever. Ask Brett Kiesel, ask Casey Hampton about that. And Tuitt's kind of had a little bit of an up and down injury history. So if these guys are able to at least come in there and do things well, in which Cam Hayward is still out there dominating and TJ Watt is still out there being TJ Watt, it's a great thing for the Steelers.
I think, the problem, could it be the middle? Your middle linebackers?
Yeah.
Schobert and Devin Bush has not lived up to the hype at all. At all.
Recently has not lived up to the hype.
Okay. I shouldn't say at all, but if you're going to be a top 10 pick, you got to be like Shazier level week 1. I know he had the injury. We get the injury. He got an injury, but if he can be more consistent and even can Minkah Fitzpatrick do anything? He made a couple plays last night, but is he consistent enough when he's not turning the ball over? Can he wreak havoc on somewhere in the backfield on a consistent basis? It's like they're running almost a Shaq and Kobe of their defense right now. And that cannot be sustainable throughout the whole game and their whole season. Because this whole defense struggling, it's not an accident. It's been a trend the entire season, except for 2 games.
Yeah, speaking of some players that have been getting, or a player, I should say, that's been getting a lot of heat from Steeler fans and, our good friends there at Pro Football Focus, Minkah Fitzpatrick, he was playing with a lot of aggressiveness yesterday. How about that hit he had there on Justin Fields? That was trending all over Twitter.
Our friends, Pro Football
Focus. Whenever I mean, for Cam Hayward, yeah, but for him, I don't know about that, Chief. But there's a lot of things you could talk about with that. There's been talk that I think the corner situation for the Steelers has really hampered Minkah's effectiveness, because he's not able to go out there and roam center field. Like, more often than not, he's had to play like left to center or even left field or right field sometimes, trying to fill in with the corners. Even a guy like Steven Nelson, as they say that, quote, he fell off last year. And also Joe Hayden when he was healthy last year and the previous year before that. And, of course, you have Mike Hilton as well. When there's autonomy, as Chris Carter liked to say in his podcast, autonomy means a ton in terms of being the rover safety, free safety, for lack of a better term, for Minkah.
Yeah, I have to go back to see, the complete how the secondary played, but just looking at the first time, I thought it was more like schematics, like the Steelers were getting in bad looks and stuff, and Fields was just taking advantage of it. Yeah, Millette obviously got roasted there on those 2 back-to-back plays that ended up in a touchdown. But I don't know, like, did you guys think Hayden or Sutton or Fitzpatrick? I mean, I know Edmonds got beat on that pass down the seat, but did you notice anything noticeable really with the corners getting beat, or do you think it was more schematics?
I think it's a little bit of you know what? Other than Millette, I don't think other than Millette, I don't think anybody's stood out poorly. But some of that was Justin Herbert running around making plays too. When you're running around making plays, you might think you're covering. You're not going to cover everybody for 5, 6, 7, receiving for 5, 6, 7 seconds. Fields made time for them to make plays, except for Millette. He got just he was just bad.
And Tomlin mentioned that some of that had to do with the quarterback mobility and stuff, and that was one thing I was really impressed with Fields because I love quarterback mobility. He's got some really nice speed. He's almost like Lamar Jackson level, really.
Lamar Jackson, yeah.
As far as speed, not
speed.
Yeah, speed wise.
I think he's a more pure passer than Lamar, but Lamar's also proving that he could do that as well as I.
In the broadcast at Fields, he ran like a 4.4 or something like that.
Yeah, he said 6'3", 225, ran a 4.4.
Yeah, that kid's gonna be a beast, and what's gonna do him in if the Bears are not careful is, of course, as you said, management, ownership, and also the coach. But I got a feeling that they're going to fix a lot of that in the coming years.
Yeah, I hope he doesn't get RG3'd.
No, you don't want that at all. Don't want that at all. So we're about to finish up this podcast. We talked about a lot about the defense, the offense as well.
We got to talk about the offensive line.
Well, we talked about that earlier.
We got to talk about more about their run stuff, the short yardage situations.
Yeah, they could not move him off the line of scrimmage.
I know we talked about the offensive line, but I wanted to mention about Kendrick Green, Kevin Dotson. We did talk about. I think we talked about Dan Moore getting beat off the edge. He allowed 2 sacks. Kendrick Green really struggled. Eddie Goldman and Akeem Hicks really, they were having their way there in the middle of the Steelers' interior part. Which Najee, he only averaged like 2.8 yards per carry. I think he rushed for 62 yards. I think.
Yeah, but there's one thing I can say about that, at least with Najee. Yeah, sorry about that. If there's one thing I can say about Najee is that he was able to fight and get a lot of those 4th and short situations, those 3rd and short situations. So
yeah,
he's got a lot of fight in him, and I think that's going to be one thing that's important as this offensive line tries to develop in their rushing attack with run blocking out there. But you don't want to see that every single time that he has the ball out there. Eventually, you want to have him get some daylight for once out there. Everything's been hard charging for him, and you just hope that when they finally do get it together, he's not done, basically.
Right, because we forgot. We're like, you know what? We're about 50 minutes into this podcast, and we have not mentioned what this guy one time.
We almost ended it without it, but yeah.
You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, of course.
Bad, baby.
Let's talk about the receivers real quick.
Yes. You thought you was gonna get away with me talking about and me not gloating about this guy?
I just wanted to end the podcast just to make sure, but just to give us a little bit of reprieve. But I knew it.
Yes.
You gotta give that man credit. That man's a beast. That man's a stud.
Beast. He's gonna.
He came out and blessed him before the game, and I was just like, man, it feels really good to have a tight end out there that can do something. Yes. It feels amazing. I'm not gonna lie.
I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna say by next year, he's gonna be your best weapon on offense.
I'd say 2 years from now, he's probably gonna be the Steelers tight end ever. He's on track, I think. He could. Yeah. I mean, you really have to put a long thought into that because, of course, you got Heath Miller at number 1, and then who's next? Randy Grossman, Eric Green.
Well, he might be almost. I'm telling you, he is a star. We have a star tight end here.
Yeah, all 4 of his touchdowns this year have come in the red zone, and that was what he's known for at Penn State. He didn't have a single drop in the red zone.
All those years of getting abused by Gronk, and they finally have a guy that can go out there and return the favor. It feels really great, but also the rest of the Steelers wide receiver core as well. They use the wide receivers more as the second running back a lot in this game. When you think about with all the jet sweeps out there, and it's creative play calling by Matt Canada. You have to give him to that. If you don't have a true second running back, this league is predicated off of these jet touch passes, those jet sweeps and all that stuff.
Right.
Let's just use our wide receivers and tell them to go, hey, fight around that corner.
Yes, I'm going to tell you something. Yeah, they had 6. James Washington carried the ball 2 times. Claypool carried the ball 2 times. Johnson carried the ball 2 times. Guess how many anybody other than Najee Harris, 2-point running back, got 2 carries?
Was there another running back that even played for the Steelers? I seen Balaj in a photo of Ben Roethlisberger coming out of the tunnel before the game started, but that was it. That was like the one time in which I seen Kalen Balaj's number called. I don't remember hearing another running back.
He had 1 catch for 2 yards.
Kalen Balaj.
Kalen Balaj, 1 catch for 2 yards. Snell had 2 carries for 6 yards.
Jeez.
No other running got any play.
And McFarland was inactive.
Huh?
And McFarland was inactive, so yeah.
It wasn't. So that's for next year. Give him a competent backup running back so you won't use him up by year 3. Because, yeah, the way this is going, but
yeah, he's on track for 400 touches, over 400 touches.
So what is the magic number? That's the magic number, right? 400 touches in a year? Yeah. That's not exactly what you want, especially in a rookie.
Especially over a 17-game season now.
Yeah, I mean, that's how Tomlin does it with his running backs. He uses them up as much as he can, really. He's their featured back. That's why they drafted him in the first round.
Yeah, he got him. He got him.
But I agree with you. I would like to see a little bit, maybe a running back too, that could at least do some, get some, give him a breather every once in a while. I think they believe McFarland's that guy, but I don't know. I guess Tomlin said the matchups, they liked what they had in this one with some of their other guys, but I don't know.
So if he's your second running back, why didn't he was it active? So they thought Benny Snell.
Yeah, it was
2 catches, 2 rushes for 6 yards, and Balaj with 1 catch for 2 yards and 0 carries. Didn't carry the ball at all. They thought they could do that. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's just rough numbers. And you don't want another running back for the Steelers to go the route of Bill Withers. Keep on using me until you use me up. I mean, come on, man. They got to find something out there. Even I trust Balaj more than Snell. That's just me. But I mean, maybe journeyman running back knows his role. But Benny knows his role as well. He's out there on special teams. But there's of course we could talk about that all day. Special teams. Let's move on a little bit. Boz is God. I guess we can agree with that. Yeah. They needed every single
field goals
from him.
2 50-yard field goals, a fumble recovery, and a game-winning field goal.
Yeah, and all that came in the fourth quarter too. He was the only kicker to ever record all those stats. 2 kicks over 50 yards, a game winner, and a fumble recovery.
Yeah, take that, Justin Tucker. Yeah, that's great to see right there, especially after last week with that. He went back right into the fray after getting concussed, but from what they told us, he was fine, or at least back on the mend by Tuesday. So, again, that was great to see, and that's why you pay your kicker, and that's why whenever your kicker has a down year, you stick with them, because then you're getting rewarded just like how they were in 2017. Is there anything else to talk about, guys?
Yeah, I mean, we're almost done here, but I was when that missed extra point, he really bounced back from that, because that almost came back to haunt the Steelers. But other points, I think we touched on it. Just the offensive line. Mike Tomlin mentioned today that they took a step back, and I agree. Like, they did really well against Cleveland. I don't know what happened up front against the Bears, especially in the interior part.
Yeah, interior was disappointing. Tackles, you take what it is. you're going to have some struggles. So, especially from a fourth-round draft pick. Robert Quinn is probably one of the most underrated and pass rushers that came in the league in the past decade. If you look at his stats, how many sacks that he has. So he's never been a scrub player at all.
I think he got lost between Aaron Donald out there in Los Angeles.
Yep.
Yeah, and then of course when you have Khalil Mack coming up over him, so yeah, there's a lot to talk about that. Also, you have to give a shout out to the Bears middle linebackers. They helped a lot with that run defense for the Bears. I mean, I can speak for both of us right now. It's just like the Steelers need a Roquan Smith.
Yep.
Yeah, he's a good
player. You know, Chris, that was my guy heading into the league. My favorite player out of that draft. Because when me and Chris did mock drafts, I knew he was going to pick him to go to the Bears, but I wanted him to go somewhere else. That picked a couple of spots ahead of him. That would have been a dream.
Yeah, he's a great player. He had that sack on Roethlisberger where he went untouched. I think Trey Turner missed him on that play, and he just, Roethlisberger was just like he had no chance there because he came in free. But yeah, what do you guys think about the broadcast yesterday? That was kind of a big discussion. Like Najee Harris tweeted after the game how like he never slept on the floor at Alabama.
I know they need to get their stuff right.
I know Steve Levy, he apologized for it and he donated to Najee Harris's foundation and everything. And
that's nice.
Yeah,
so
that's
nice.
Yeah, it was an honest mistake, but it sounded really weird during the broadcast. I guess I read that he got mixed up with Najee Harris with Josh Jacobs, but yeah, and then there was also talk about him messing up on the people thought he thought it was a doink, but it's tough. Ty could talk about this, as a broadcaster and stuff.
Yeah, sometimes with the again, it's a monitor situation. Really, I talk about that because in the future, again, I would like to be in Steve Levy's spot, and I know that I'm not really any good right now, but I'm improving. Well, I'll give myself some credit. I'm decent, but improving. But yeah, it's just like sometimes when you look at that monitor, it's just the way it is. Everyone's gonna make a mistake out there as a broadcaster, and I always have an affinity for these guys. I mean, of course, I like Louis Riddick. I always respected Brian Griese as a quarterback and all that stuff, and his father did the same thing as a color commentator for a while. I mean, people need to understand right now that at least for commentators, it's not something that you can just get up off the street and do. In some situations, you can do it, but it's not going to have the highest quality. And I think you have to go like, hey, these guys are doing the best they can. Because trust me, the preparation that I go through just for high school football games, imagine if I was calling something of consequence like a WPIL championship or a conference championship or a Super Bowl or some sort of college game. I think you have to look at it like this. And of course, most of it comes down to it. Well, my team is losing, so, I don't like that they're talking bad about my team. I don't want to talk bad about anyone's team whenever I'm out there. I want you all to do great. I want to call 50 to 50 shootouts all night. Believe me, but
yeah,
it just happened.
I laughed at it last night on Twitter because the way Najee tweeted it, and then like even a video came out which I tweeted also where Levy was talking about it, and it was an honest mistake. Everybody makes mistakes. Josh Jacobs was an Alabama running back, so I could see how he got the two mixed up, and the guy that actually tweeted the video from, he ended up deleting it. So it's all good. Credit to Levy too for admitting his mistake, and he just donated to Harris's foundation too. But really on that drive, like the ESPN broadcast, they mentioned it like almost the whole entire drive about Najee Harris's story and everything. I mean, it's a great story.
And messing up his name as well.
Yeah, messing up. That's another thing Najee Harris pointed out.
Trust me, I know exactly how they feel about this, but I had to deal with it live in person. A quick story: I had to go do a broadcasting job for the for the Western Pennsylvania Youth Football League Super Bowl. There was this one kid from Clarendon. I accidentally kept on getting his last name wrong, Pompoy instead of Pompey. And his mother was in the stands basically screaming my head off. So trust me, I know exactly how these guys feel. And let me tell you this right now, if you were in the same position as these guys, it's not a fun world. You love to call the game winners and all that stuff. You love to call the big moments, but there's situations out there where you're just trying to fill broadcast time. And, man, all these notes you have, you got to eventually use them at one point. It can't just be the entire game all day, which it was.
Right.
You got to give respect to these guys. I'll give them their props every single day. You won't catch me talking bad about another guy because, I want to be in their place.
I guess what Marsh's his sack celebration was actually a spinning roundhouse kick. Did you guys see that?
I did not watch it.
It was a roundhouse kick.
I was like, what is this guy like? Marsh, to give a little background, I know he played for the Steelers, but like he's been cut by a bunch of teams, and
because
he had bad things to say about Belichick too in the Patriots.
Oh yeah, that was what I mentioned. That he was talking trash about Belichick. You're in the Patriot ways and fine.
Well, what do you think happened? What happened with Belichick was the coach, and Marsh did that.
You mean if Billy was coaching, it was there last night?
He would got cut right on the spot.
He would have just basically said, "Nah, get out of here right now." So yeah, I mean, Cassius Marsh is still a good guy. I hope his card company out in California is doing well because you should have stopped in there whenever you were back in California, Chris, because that would have been pretty awesome. But hey, I mean, Cassius Marsh, he's an interesting guy out there. Did you see his post-game attire out there?
Yeah, the coat he had on. Yeah, that was just a bizarre story. Like, who would have thought that Cassius Marsh would have been a big talking point with that game? I mean, he was, a center of a controversy really with the whole taunting rule. But yeah, I don't know. I guess we know how Marsh feels he feels some kind of way with the Steelers cutting him.
I think he had to whenever you came up for this league, but then again, it's any given Sunday, any given Monday, and any given Thursday night. Someone becomes the hero or the GOAT, and sadly, Marsh is the GOAT because of that. But it's not his fault. He'll probably get another sack, and this time he'll just walk off the field with no fanfare. I'm willing to bet that's the next time he gets that opportunity. And now, guys, we're officially done with the Bears podcast recap, and now the Steelers will stay in the NFC North kitchen. As coming up next is the Detroit Lions, and you mentioned Tomlin's special. He got his 150th win. So, okay, big milestone out of the way. So now let's avoid the true Tomlin special in the Detroit Lions. We'll have someone coming up to learn more about the Lions, and we got to ask the question, the similarities between the team that went 0-16 and the team that's currently 0-8. I'm pretty sure it's two different teams in that time. But remember, guys, just a little bit of a hint. The last time the Detroit Lions went winless in a season, the Steelers won the Super Bowl. So just keep that thought in mind.
You see what you're trying to do. I see what you're trying to do. That is a good question. That is good.
Things that make you think. Just want to make you think. But yeah, we'll have that podcast coming up later in the week. But until then, for Chris Ward and Brandon Walker, I'm Ty Polk. Thank you for tuning in to the Renegade Blitz.
Thank you for listening to the Renegade Blitz podcast. Follow us on Twitter at Renegade Blitz, at @RBlitzPod, and at Blitz Videos. Read articles on renegadeblitz.com. Like us on Facebook, and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast app. The Renegade Blitz podcast is available on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, YouTube, Spotify, and wherever else you can listen to podcasts.